What if the forest you walk into never lets you walk out? There are places in the world where the silence feels unnatural. Forests so dark, so vast, that stepping just a few paces inside feels like crossing a threshold into another realm. One such place is the Deepwood. For centuries, it has been whispered about in hushed tones. A wilderness said to consume those who dare wander too far beneath its ancient canopy. They say screams have echoed through those trees, distant and fleeting, never traced back to their source. Hikers report glowing eyes watching from the shadows, and some claim to have seen a beast unlike any animal known to man. Fangs flashing in the moonlight, claws tearing into bark as if the forest itself was its hunting ground. Tonight you will hear the legends. You will walk the same paths as those who never returned. Picture it now. Towering trees rising like cathedral columns, their branches knitting together to blot out the sky. Even at noon, the trails are swallowed in gloom. The deeper you go, the heavier the air becomes, as though the forest is pressing in around you. The silence is suffocating. No birdsong, no rustling leaves. Only the sound of your own footsteps echoing on soil that seems far too soft, as if the ground itself remembers what it has consumed. The deeper you go, the easier it is to lose your bearings. Compass needles spin, paths twist back upon themselves, and the deeper shadows move in ways they shouldn't. Locals warn not to enter at night. They say that once darkness falls, the forest changes. Shapes slip between the trees just outside the reach of your flashlight. The wind carries voices that sound almost human, whispering your name. And sometimes, if you're very unlucky, you might hear a low growl, so deep and primal that it vibrates through your chest. Those who have heard it never forget it, the sound of something ancient, hunting, waiting. Hunters claimed they heard their names whispered from unseen mouths, voices eerily familiar, as if loved ones were calling them deeper into the shadows. Travelers spoke of paths that looped endlessly back upon themselves. No matter which direction they turned, they returned to the same spot, as though the forest had rearranged itself while they weren't looking. Many who attempted to cross the Deepwood at night were never seen again. Their fates became part of the myth. Did the forest consume them, or did something inside carry them away? Parents passed down cautionary tales to their children. Stay away from the Deepwood at night, or you'll never come home. Over time, these warnings became tradition. People avoided the woods not just out of fear, but out of respect, as though entering meant breaking an unspoken pact. And yet, despite the legends, there were always those who dared. In the 1800s, logging companies attempted to cut into the Deepwood. For a time, work camps thrived on its edge, felling the outer trees for lumber. But the deeper they went, the stranger things became. Workers reported tools vanishing overnight, only to be found bent or broken miles away. Horses refused to enter the tree line, rearing in panic at unseen threats. And then, one season, an entire camp was found abandoned. Supplies still stacked neatly, fires burned down to embers, but not a single man remained. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just silence. By the early 1900s, hunters venturing into the woods began reporting grisly discoveries. Carcasses of deer and elk were found mutilated, not killed for food, but torn apart, as if by claws too large for any known predator. Some described trees with deep gouges carved into their bark, claw marks reaching higher than any bear could stand. The strangest detail of all, many of these kills were left uneaten, as though the purpose was not survival but warning. Newspapers of the time occasionally printed short columns about strange happenings or disappearances near the Deepwood, but the stories rarely gained traction. They were dismissed as rumor, exaggeration, or the superstition of rural folk. Still, among locals, the legend only grew stronger. By the mid-20th century, the Deepwood had become a place people avoided after dark. Even in daylight, hunters would stick to its fringes, rarely daring to go far without a companion. Campers often spoke of a watched feeling, as if eyes followed them from the treeline. Some swore they saw movement in the shadows, shapes that vanished when they turned their heads. And yet, the lure of mystery persisted. Paranormal enthusiasts, folklore collectors, and thrill seekers occasionally braved the forest, hoping to glimpse whatever had inspired the centuries of stories. Many returned with chilling accounts of their own, missing time, strange sounds, and tracks too large to belong to any known creature. Others never returned at all. So the question remains. If you heard voices in the trees, calling your name in the dark, voices that sounded like your family, your friends, the people you trust most, would you keep walking deeper into the shadows, or would you turn back? By the 1970s, the Deepwood was already a place most locals avoided. But as with every forbidden place, its darkness attracted curiosity. And one summer night, a group of campers decided to test the forest's reputation. They were young, college-aged, restless, looking for adventure. Friends who wanted to prove that the old stories were nothing more than superstition. With backpacks and tents, they entered the Deepwood, laughing and joking as they made their way past the tree line. To them, it was nothing more than a weekend getaway. As the sun set, they built a fire in a small clearing. Flames crackled, shadows danced across the trunks of ancient pines. They roasted food, told stories, and teased each other about the so-called monster of the woods. Some claimed they heard rustling in the brush, but each sound was met with laughter. "It's just the wind," one of them joked. The Deepwood, to them, was harmless. But as the night deepened, the mood began to shift. The laughter grew softer, replaced by long silences between stories. The forest, once alive with the hum of insects, grew unnaturally quiet. The air turned heavy, still. Even the fire seemed to burn lower, its glow swallowed by the surrounding dark. One of the campers thought they heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling just beyond the edge of light. Another swore they saw a shape, tall and broad, lingering between the trees. They called out, thinking it was a prank. No answer came, only silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the woods, a branch snapped. Not the dry crack of a twig, but the sharp splintering of heavy wood, as if something massive had stepped down with impossible weight. The laughter ended. Every face turned toward the darkness. For a few long minutes, nothing happened. Then came the sound, low, guttural, and unmistakably alive. A growl, so deep it vibrated through the ground, rattling their bones. It rose and fell like thunder, echoing through the forest before vanishing into silence once more. Panic set in. The campers retreated into their tents, hoping the thin fabric would protect them. But fear has a way of magnifying every sound. Twigs snapping, leaves crunching. A breath? Or was it the wind? One camper whispered that something was outside, moving between the tents. Another said they heard their name called softly, in a voice that sounded eerily familiar, even though no one in the group had spoken. Then chaos. A scream tore through the night, followed by the sound of fabric ripping. The fire sputtered as shadows burst across the clearing. Shouts, running, more screams. The forest erupted in violence, then fell silent again. When a search party entered days later, they found the camp. Tents shredded open as if by claws. Sleeping bags torn and scattered. Food supplies left uneaten, as though whatever had entered the clearing was not interested in hunger, but in destruction. Personal belongings lay strewn about. Flashlights, packs, even clothing. But of the campers themselves, there was no sign. No bodies. No blood trails leading away. Nothing except for one detail. Half buried in the soil near the edge of the clearing, a single boot. Worn, weathered, and torn at the seam, as if something had dragged it through the dirt. It was the only trace of those who had vanished. Authorities scoured the forest for days. Search teams moved in with dogs, combing every trail, every ravine, every clearing. But the dogs refused to go deeper. They whined, pulled against their leashes, and refused to cross into certain areas. Experienced trackers said it was as though the forest itself had swallowed the campers whole. In the official reports, little was written beyond missing persons. No foul play determined, no suspects named. Unofficially, those who were there still whisper about what they saw. Claw marks carved deep into the bark of trees, reaching higher than any human hand could touch. The search party combed every inch of the forest, but only one boot was ever found. The disappearances were only the beginning. As decades passed, stories of the Deepwood began to focus on something darker. Not just a cursed forest, but a predator that called it home. Locals who lived near the tree line described encounters that could not be explained away. Hunters swore they had seen a towering figure, wolf-like in shape but far too large to be any known animal. Its eyes glowed in the dark, amber or yellow, burning like coals in the underbrush. Some said the creature stood upright, moving with an unnatural grace. Others claimed it dropped to all fours and ran, faster than any man could hope to escape. In the 1980s, a small team of amateur paranormal investigators entered the Deepwood with tape recorders and cameras. By dawn, they returned pale and shaken, refusing to speak in detail about what they had experienced. What they did release was a fragment of audio, a distorted howl that rose and cracked in pitch, unlike the call of any coyote, wolf, or bear. The sound rattled listeners, more human than animal, yet unmistakably predatory. Skeptics dismissed it as a hoax, but those who lived nearby said it matched what they had heard echoing through the woods at night. Imagine walking the Deepwood Trail at dusk, a flashlight in your hand, its narrow beam cutting through the mist. At first, the forest seems still. Then, a rustling behind you, too heavy for a rabbit, too deliberate for the wind. You turn, but nothing is there. A few steps forward, and the sound returns, closer this time. Branches shifting, leaves crunching. Your pulse quickens as you swing the light back again. That's when you see them. Two glowing eyes, hovering between the trees, unblinking, watching. Your breath catches. The eyes vanish. Silence. But then a flash of movement. A shape lunges from the shadows, faster than thought, darker than night. Survivors' accounts describe the same chilling details. The forest seems to hold its breath, the air heavy, waiting. Then comes the sound. Claws scraping against bark, long and deliberate, as if marking territory. A growl follows, low and resonant, vibrating through the ground beneath your feet. It draws nearer, circling, never staying in one place. The growl builds, echoing from every direction at once, until panic takes hold. People run, stumbling blindly through the brush. Some claim they felt hot breath at their necks, or the brush of claws reaching just inches from their backs. And then the climax, a scream ripped from the night, sharp, human, and cut short in an instant. The forest falls silent again, as if nothing ever happened. Only the trembling of leaves and the echo of that final cry remain. By the late 20th century, the idea of a beast in the Deepwood had become ingrained in local folklore. Some said it was a werewolf, others a spirit of the forest taking animal form. Skeptics argued it was nothing more than a bear or a trick of the imagination. But the claw marks found on trees, the mutilated animals left uneaten, and the growing list of disappearances kept the legend alive. Even today, hikers whisper about the Watcher of the Woods. Some claim the glowing eyes are not an animal at all, but something older, something that has lived in the Deepwood long before the first legends were spoken. So what do you believe? Is the Deepwood home to a flesh-and-blood creature, a predator yet undiscovered by science? Or does it hide something far worse, something that defies all explanation? Not all who entered the Deepwood vanished. A handful returned, broken, trembling, forever changed. Their words form the fragments of what we know about the forest, and the things that hunt within it. One survivor from the late 1970s, whose name was kept from the public, spoke only once about their experience before retreating into silence. According to their account, they had been camping with friends when, in the middle of the night, screams tore through the forest. In the chaos, they ran, desperate to escape. They described the sensation of being trapped in a nightmare where every trail twisted back on itself. A path that should have led out only curved deeper inward. Landmarks repeated, the same hollow log, the same split oak, appearing again and again as if the forest itself was shifting to keep them inside. Their voice shook as they recalled the sound that followed them. Heavy footsteps, steady, deliberate. Not rushing, stalking. Branches broke, twigs snapped, but never too close. Just near enough to remind them they were not alone. The Deepwood did more than threaten with teeth and claws. Tore at the mind. Survivors spoke of whispers that rose with the wind, voices they swore belonged to their lost friends, calling them deeper into the shadows. Others admitted to seeing shapes between the trees, silhouettes of people who should not have been there, standing perfectly still, waiting. Exhaustion blurred the line between hallucination and reality. Were those eyes glowing ahead, or only fireflies caught in the dark? Was that shadow following close behind, or nothing more than the forest's trick of light? Panic bred doubt, and doubt bred terror. With every step, the survivors questioned not only the world around them, but their own sanity. One account describes a final, desperate sprint. The survivor, convinced something massive was just behind them, dared to glance over their shoulder. For a heartbeat, they locked eyes with it, two orbs burning in the dark, unblinking, fixed on them. That sight snapped the last thread of composure. They ran blindly, branches clawing at their face, roots tearing at their feet. They broke into what looked like an opening, a clearing bathed faintly in moonlight. But the forest betrayed them. Trees leaned in, closing ranks, as though the woods themselves did not want to let them go. Behind, the growl rose again, deep, guttural, vibrating through the earth. The air itself seemed to pulse with it, pushing them forward, forcing them to run faster than they ever thought possible. And then dawn. The survivor stumbled out of the treeline just as the first rays of light cut across the horizon. The silence of the morning was almost unbearable after the cacophony of the night. Birds sang. The forest looked still, calm, almost innocent. They collapsed on the roadside, trembling, unable to comprehend how they had survived when so many had not. But when they were lifted to safety, rescuers noticed something that froze them in place. Across the survivor's back, carved deep into the flesh, were 4 long claw marks, raw, jagged, and bleeding. Marks they had no memory of receiving. The survivor never returned to the Deepwood. In fact, they never spoke of that night again. But their scars told the story for them. So, the question lingers. If the forest itself is a maze, if the mind turns traitor, and if something hunts from the shadows, then what chance does anyone have of escaping the Deepwood? The Deepwood story does not end with the past. Even now, decades later, the forest refuses to release its grip on those who dare to enter. This legend is not just history. It is alive. Hikers who tread too far from the beaten path still vanish, their names quietly added to missing persons bulletins. Search teams comb the woods, but time and again, the pattern repeats. No footprints leading out, no sign of where they went. Hunters have reported claw marks carved deep into tree trunks, higher than any bear could reach. Fresh gouges, sometimes oozing sap as if they were torn open only hours earlier. Others describe the unsettling feeling of being stalked, hearing footsteps circling them at dusk, the sound always moving, never revealing itself. Campers, even in groups, speak of nights where growls echo around their tents. The ground vibrates as something moves past. Yet when morning comes, no tracks remain. Nothing but the silence of the woods, as though the night itself had been erased. In the last 2 decades, investigators drawn to the Deepwood have brought cameras, recorders, and thermal scanners into the trees. But the forest has a way of fighting back. Batteries that were full drain in seconds. Compasses spin without direction. Static cuts through microphones, replacing the hum of the night with distorted whispers. On rare occasions, cameras catch something strange. Figures caught in blurry frames. Tall, thin, sometimes hunched, lurking at the edge of firelight before vanishing. Some dismiss these as tricks of shadow or technical errors. Others argue they are proof that something dwells in the Deepwood, waiting for those who linger too long. Perhaps most unsettling are the sights left behind. Rangers and search parties have found camps where food sits half-eaten, fires still smolder, and gear lies scattered as if its owners stepped away only minutes before. But no one is there. In one case, a ranger recalled approaching a campsite that looked lived in. A backpack unzipped, shoes neatly placed beside a tent. Yet the tent itself had been slashed open from the inside. No trace of the campers was ever found. And so the Deepwood remains what it has always been. A place of questions without answers. A forest that swallows its secrets whole. For centuries, it has claimed lives, driven people to madness, and left only fragments of evidence in its wake. And the most unsettling truth is this: no one knows if it will ever stop. Some believe the Deepwood is cursed, haunted by spirits of the lost. Others insist there is something alive within it, something that has always been there, and always will be. But those who have walked its shadow trails and returned carry the same warning. Stay away. Because in the Deepwood, the greatest danger is not what you see, but what you hear. A branch breaking, a growl rising, a whisper calling your name. And once you hear it, it may already be too late. For nearly 2 hours, we've walked the shadowed trails of the Deepwood. We've uncovered legends whispered by the first people who dared to map it. We've followed the hunters and campers who vanished without a trace. We've listened to survivors who escaped, but never truly left it behind. And we've seen how, even today, the forest continues to draw people in and swallow them whole. Some places on this earth carry a weight, a darkness that defies explanation. The Deepwood is one of them, a forest that holds its silence like a secret, that bends time and twists the mind, that offers no answers, only more questions. Some forests are peaceful, some are beautiful, and some hold secrets darker than night itself. The Deepwood is one of them. So I'll leave you with this. Would you dare to enter the Deepwood at night? Tell me in the comments below. And if you want more journeys into true horror, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the forest is waiting, and it never forgets.